Alright, so the merry-go-round for the GameCube had to come to an end sooner or later. It was actually one of those aforementioned missteps by Nintendo I had alluded to earlier. According to Wikipedia, the PS2 sold 7 times as much as the GameCube, and Nintendo would have to think outside the box if they wanted to return to form in the following generation. The sheer concept that the GameCube was able to claim second place in my rankings is absolutely ludicrous! And the even more ludicrous thing is, it actually did better than that. Hello, bait and switch! My name is Tony! The silver medal actually goes to the Nintendo 64, a mind-boggling notion that may leave some viewers literally foaming at the mouth. It's hard to pinpoint the biggest jumps in gaming, but this was the console that completely changed an industry forevermore, so it certainly deserves mention. We had dabbled in polygons before, but it was clear to see that we hadn't arrived yet. Fast forward a few years and we were looking at this. It's night and day. And if that isn't enough to sway you, perhaps a familiar face will.
Hello!
Mario 64 defined what the 3D platformer should be. It was just jam-packed with content and imagination. It laid down the groundwork that pretty much every game would have to follow. And in my opinion at least, nobody, not even Mario himself, has managed to surpass it. Prior to Fire Emblem Awakening, this was my favorite game of all time. And even though it's been bumped from the top spot, it still resonates with me so much. It's just a complete package of mirth. And Mario controls so well, he feels like an extension of my body. I just can't find a use for that breakdance kick though. One of the most significant features for the Nintendo 64 was its emphasis on multiplayer gaming. 4 players at the one time, frantically trying to best one another on the race course, on the battlefield, or in the facility. Me personally, I usually hid up in the vents above the toilets because I was lame like that. Now gaming had gone from an isolated hobby to a party. It even invited opportunities for groups larger than 4 people with its rapid-fire sessions. Winner stays on became a phrase closely linked to the N64. And I mastered the fine art of quitting moments before I lost. You know what? I was a jerk. I don't know why anyone bothered hanging out with me. I don't know why anyone hangs out with me now. Oh wait, they don't. In many ways, the N64 was the last of its kind. The incredible success of the PlayStation meant that others would have to follow their example. It was a changing of the old guard, with expensive cartridges and battery-backed memory becoming obsolete. There's a certain appeal to skipping lengthy loading times and just jumping right into the action, but the writing was on the wall. Had Nintendo not messily severed their ties with Sony during the development of a new disc-based hardware, they may not have ended up creating their greatest rival. Which would have been better for Nintendo, obviously, but worse for the industry overall. A high tide raises all boats, and this competition has allowed for some truly spectacular innovation. So, let's address the elephant in the room. It's tiny, it's purple, and it has a handle so you can carry it around from room to room. It could be the elephant in any room. To most people, the GameCube was a lackluster curio lost in the shuffle as the PlayStation 2 became a worldwide phenomenon. This was a low point for Nintendo, and one that they would perhaps rather forget. Why then has it somehow managed to stake its unlikely claim as my favorite console of all time? Well, it all comes down to timing, really. The lifespan of the GameCube corresponded with my teenage years, and it was at this point that my burgeoning independence and my growing friendship group created opportunities to actually take advantage of what multiplayer was supposed to be. You know all those things I talked about in the Nintendo 64 entry? For me, a lot of that wasn't fully realized. I was still playing games mostly with my sister and occasionally my dad. It wasn't until the GameCube that my friends would come over to my place after school and we would have a blast. The lunacy of Mario Kart Double Dash. The camaraderie of Phantasy Star Online, even though we played it offline. The shenanigans of Mario Power Tennis. The rousing quests we took in Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles until the memory card got corrupted and wiped our save files. Yeah, that day sucked. But of course, the multiplayer mecca would be Super Smash Bros. Melee. The original Smash Bros. Was an unexpected hit for Nintendo, and the anticipation for Melee was sky high. It's fair to say that it more than surpassed those expectations, and we sunk days into it. I mean, we had to if we wanted to unlock Mewtwo after all. The bastard needed 20 combined hours of playtime before he showed his ugly face, and all he managed to give us was bottom tier performance. What a jerk! But the GameCube shone just as much as a console for the solo gamer. Mario Sunshine may not have been quite as spectacular as its predecessor, but it was still an excellent game that is looked back on more favorably in hindsight. And the same goes for the launch title Luigi's Mansion 2, once criticized for being too short, now the 3DS remaster. Speaking of criticism, people got their pitchforks out once they saw the cel-shaded graphics of The Wind Waker, and of course that turned out to be much ado about nothing. Just a few minutes in, we were all hooked, and though the ocean is really just a clever way of artificially making the world feel bigger than it really is, there is a serenity to riding the waves that has not really ever been recaptured in the Zelda series. Really, the GameCube just kinda got me, at a time in my life when I was transitioning into manhood just as awkwardly as anyone else. The Pikmin games were equal parts tranquil and terrifying, and they forced me to think on the fly, lest my tiny little minions be gobbled up before my eyes. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door has so much personality and just so much charm, and I wish people talked about it more than they do. I want to talk about it more than I do. I fell in love with my Chao Gardens in Sonic Adventure 2 battle. I spent more time there than I did in the actual game world. And finally, words can hardly express just what Animal Crossing meant to me when I first played it in 2004. I endeavored to accomplish everything I could to the point where I even tried to wake up at 6 AM to see what it looked like when the dump was emptied. I never managed to actually do that, funnily enough, because yeah, I was just as lazy back then as I am now. The GameCube had all of the cards stacked against it, and unfortunately it wasn't able to reach the heights of its competitors. But to me, and to other Nintendo fanatics at the time, it resonated, how it dared to be different. Maybe at times it did so in a manner that was archaic rather than bold, but I didn't bat an eyelid. Just thinking of the sound of that logo assembling on screen, so playful and jolly, it brings me peace. And really, isn't that what gaming is all about? We live in an era where it's morphed into a mega industry, and to some, gaming has even become a lucrative career. There's a lot of pressure to perform, and sometimes the luster of success can dull the enjoyment that comes from just sitting down and playing a video game. I myself had fallen victim to this phenomenon at times, both in my desire to somehow eke a life out of this industry, and my insistence on pouring time and money into a YouTube channel that, yeah look, I know, it gets nearly nothing in the way of traffic. Going back to the GameCube, I returned to a time before all that. Before adulthood. Before employment. Before university. Before Kesha. Back when I played games simply because it was something I loved doing. And when all was said and done, I loved doing it on the GameCube, most of all. Thank you so much for spending the time and checking out this list. Hey, if you liked it, leave a comment, share it with your friends or your enemies, if you're so inclined, and check out my other stuff as well. If you're a Nintendo fan, I've got my Pokemon Red Nuzlocke challenge going. I've got some Sonic Mania stuff because I love Sonic Mania. I've got all kinds of stuff on this channel. If you never get any further than this, then hey, thanks for watching as long as you did. Peace, love, and hugs.